He's doing it.
Hey everybody, welcome to a conversation with Corner Church with Greg, Kim, and Rachel. We're missing the other two, which is great.
We don't miss them. It's fine.
It's great that Scott can be on Christmas trip with his family.
That is great.
And Rich is working at the coffee shop,
also,
which is less great.
Thank you, Rich. Not as great, but still great.
Today we're starting a series on Mark, and so we'll jump into the first part of Mark chapter 1.
Mark 1.
That's where we're going today.
I like it. So what is interesting about Mark is he skips all of Jesus's upbringing and just starts right at John the Baptist and his public ministry. Like there's no backstory of Jesus in Mark. I feel like we're just like in it.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Yeah, there's almost an assumption that people know some stuff about Jesus.
Yeah. Which I think is interesting when like Greg and I were talking about this a little bit yesterday.
It doesn't even have like the birth or anything.
Nothing.
No.
It just starts with John the Baptist. But like I think like Greg and I were talking about this a little bit yesterday about how this was his hometown. Like it's a smaller community. It's not like, the population's not what it is today. So people know of each other and they know like even if they don't know each other, they probably have heard of each other or they're, like it's a smaller community. So all these people in the story.
There's no cars. They're not.
Yeah. It's not like this is the first time they've
people as far
heard
as you
of
can
Jesus.
walk in a day.
Yeah. Right. And so I think when you think of it from that perspective, it makes it go, oh, like when Jesus is going into the synagogue or he's calling the disciples or he's doing these things, like these are people that know who he is. Like it's not his brand. It feels very shocking. It feels like immediate and it's like urgency, which Mark writes with like urgency.
Sure.
It feels like it just feels like Jesus said, hey buddy. And like, they were like, sure, why not? Let's do this. I like it.
I'm in.
I'm in, yo.
I'm in, yeah.
But anyways, so.
Yeah. Mark is, well, I think you wrote it in the next week's notes already, but how Mark is one of the least studied Gospels.
Especially in the early centuries, like there wasn't much research on Mark, but it sounded like they were starting to research Mark more, but yeah, like it is one of the least studied.
Yeah. Which I think is interesting. I think it's probably the gospel story that's written to the widest audience, potentially.
I liked reading Mark because like the way Mark is written, it is a little less flowery than Luke, I guess. And so it's, I don't know, like they talk about Mark being kind of not hard to read, but not like as well written as some of the other books. But I feel like I don't know, it's an easy read. I know it sounds, there's stuff behind it, but I'm like, oh, I can.
Feels like not impulsive,
keep my attention.
maybe,
but
like that kind of, a little bit, like one of those things where I'm like, oh, this is like, so, like, this is my speed.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
okay, we can just
exactly.
like, keep moving.
Like, I can keep reading this.
Yeah.
I get the gist of everything that's happening. Yeah. I like that. But when I was reading about Mark, it talked about how the book of Mark was written to show us the suffering servant. Like that is the overall viewpoint is the servanthood of Jesus and showing, it was Peter's stories told to John Mark from what I've read. Like that's what it seems like. It's like Peter's account of his experience with Jesus and those stories, which I'm excited about just because it's Peter. I kind of like Peter. He does dumb stuff sometimes, but as a story, I like Peter. So.
Yeah. I think it's interesting as we begin a new gospel narrative to look at just the way that the gospel has grown or changed or become more accessible over time. I think Scott has some of this in his writing, and we talk about it often how church today, a lot of church today is structured around this idea that only one person can translate the Bible and then they share it to everybody. And that was very ancient experience because there weren't many Bibles and not many people could read. And so everyone would gather around once a week to hear somebody read from the scripture. And things have changed drastically. And I don't think modern church expression of the expression of church has changed much. And so that's why I think a lot of churches still do that, like come hear one person talk about this perspective.
Right.
And I think Scott brings up I can't remember what the things of memory thing. Yeah.
Oh, that
Bloom's taxonomy.
Yeah.
Scott brings that up all the time because it really shows this reality of like, okay, if you want information of Jesus, there's more information now available to every single person than it's ever been. And so how does that reality change the way that we participate in the community together? I think that's an interesting question to evaluate. Even this Sunday doing a Google search, who is Jesus, just to show the proof that like you can find every translation, commentary, everything, Christian, non-Christian, like all of these different perspectives of who Jesus is. So the amount of information is insane and available. And so thinking that the only goal on Sunday when we come together is to just spew information to people seems really redundant when everything is available all the time. And so just encouraging people to reflect and go deeper. And so like Mark week 1 is setting the groundwork for who Jesus is and his character and what he's about to do. And the thing we're focusing on is this anticipation. We had just come out of Judges, and it's this spiral, and Jesus, and when we were in Judges, talked many times about how Jesus is the answer to that spiral away of humanity from relationship with God. And now there's this anticipation is coming to fruition in Mark 1. And this John the Baptist moment is this picture of recognition of who Jesus is. Yeah. And so I just think that's really good and important groundwork to lay as you walk into beginning a gospel again. Is like everyone can read this.
Yeah. I love, like, growing up, I feel like everyone always talked about John being the book to start with. Like, there's so much theological insights in John, but Mark feels so accessible. Like, it feels like you were saying, like, all these different gospels are written sort of differently. Like, there's a different perspective in each one, and Mark feels very accessible. And so I like this as a starting point for the new year. I feel like it's a nice way to be reminded of, like, to really understand the identity of Jesus. And like we talked about that for not this week, but next week, just talking about the identity of Jesus. And so I'm excited about Mark's perspective of who Jesus is and understanding that a little bit more.
I anticipate that identity of Jesus thing will be a pretty big reoccurring theme that we see in Mark. Like every week we'll probably have some theme, and then like, how do we respond to that being a part of Jesus's identity? I think Mark's like very matter of fact in his writing, which I think like it's probably the closest gospel to a bullet point list. Yeah,
maybe that's why it's like, oh, I can do this. I can follow along really easy.
Sure, that makes sense.
I really love the story of Jesus' baptism because, like, I wrote a little paper earlier this year for the people getting baptized, so I spent a little time just kind of understanding baptism a little bit more. And the baptism, like, I think that like in the Old Testament there's stories of baptism. Sorry, that was really hard for me to keep talking.
No, you did great. I
did until I was like, I actually am just fumbling words because
somebody came in the door.
Someone came in the door.
Fine.
You might have seen it in my camera. But like in the Old Testament, like this, they get baptized in the Jordan River, which is close to where the Promised Land was, which I think is really interesting. And like it talks about like this cleansing, and some of what I was reading in the older, like when I was researching, some of the goals, I'm trying to find it, sorry. Some of the goals are to, there's an opportunity for the people to renew their commitment to God by walking through the water. So with John the Baptist, there's an opportunity to recommit, and it mirrors the Old Testament when the Israelites are walking through the Jordan River into the Promised Land. And with that, what they were told is they were told to serve God alone, to love their neighbors, and to pursue justice together. And this moment of John the Baptist baptizing people reflects so much of that Old Testament thing where they are going into the Promised Land, they're starting something new. This is like the beginning of another covenant. And I just really love when like New Testament mirrors something in the Old Testament and just like kind of deepens our understanding of what's happening. And I think it also can be really overwhelming because it's like, I don't even know how well I understand what happened in the Old Testament. And so like now I have to put in perspective, and I don't have I'm not in the same place the readers or the people in this moment are. So like there's so much perspective to understand, but also like fun for me to understand and interesting.
Yeah. I like the reflection of baptism, the water, and all of these different scriptural moments especially the Old Testament moments that these people would have had some sort of understanding, at least the Jewish or the Israelite people would have had an understanding of just like the creation. It's just water. And then out of that water, things come, and then Noah and the ark and surrounded. And then then there's Jonah and the whale and the water again. And then they cross the Red Sea, and then coming to the promised land, they cross the Jordan. Like it's this really repeated theme of water over and over, and like coming through water.
Yeah.
I love it.
I like it too.
I thought you were going to say something.
When you're like, no. I was thinking about like, it has nothing to do with this, but like I have like just like a weird fascination with water. And you know when you go to like like a conservatory where it has like the big garden, it has like some kind of like water flow like of some sort. I want to like live in that.
Yeah.
Like there's something about like not the cleansingness, maybe that's what it is subconsciously, but it's so calming, but then also like the beauty of like a terrifying waterfall that could like kill you in a second if you like were to like go underneath it.
Sure.
You know, like run through it, which like I don't know why that is so appealing to me, to like be in a waterfall where there's like flowing water.
No, it sounds great.
I love it. It sounds great.
There's a waterfall.
To be taken out by like a waterfall.
There's a waterfall. Yeah, don't get taken out. But there's a little waterfall in Osceola in Wisconsin.
That's where I was.
You can go into that waterfall, and it is pretty amazing.
It is so weird.
I
don't understand how it just keeps from
I
where?
went to Taylor's Falls looking for a waterfall. There is no waterfall in Taylor's
Falls. Which is very disappointing.
What?
There's no waterfall.
You can go on a hike for like the Taylor Falls hike.
I don't think there ever was.
It like leads to the St. Croix. Like it doesn't actually.
I've done it twice where I've driven my family for like a trip and like just like a day trip to Taylor's Falls looking for waterfalls, and there's none. But Osceola, which is nearby, has a waterfall, and you can.
It's so beautiful.
You can walk behind it, and like you get a little soaked and wet, but like it is.
You can even like walk up to it and like be in like its like little waiting area, and it's so nice.
I don't know how to tie this back to spiritual application for Mark.
You know, maybe that's subconsciously why we love it.
Maybe
because it's just ingrained in us.
It's ingrained in us. It is refreshing. It is a beautiful moment. Oh,
it's super strange. I remember for my birthday, we went hiking.
We went off a tangent.
Well, I was looking up. This is just proof that information is easily accessible. There's a dam there in Taylor's Falls, and so I imagine at one point there was a waterfall, and then it got dammed up.
Oh, that's what it is.
Yep. So then, coming out of the conversation about water that Kim loves so much,
I love it. Big old straw.
Then you can answer this question.
Oh,
what insights do we get about God as we start to process the symbol of water?
Oh my goodness. Okay.
I love it.
This is actually like, okay. So in my brain, which is probably right, from what I know, it makes sense to me. It should make sense to everyone else is how I think of it, because I do feel I'm quite simple thinking. But then I also, this could not, anyways. So I think it's really beautiful how versatile water is and how necessary it is. Like literally just from the basic steps of like the practicality of like you literally need it to survive.
Yeah.
Which is just makes sense. Like, yeah, of course. But like you can survive longer with water than you can with food. Yeah. Incredible. But then also just like the sheer force of like how versatile it is between like how strong it is, like with the waterfalls that could take you out, and like the current that it can bring, but then also how like it leads into like calmness, and it is cleansing, and it like you were talking about with like the Red Sea, like it's something that is something so that is a beautiful picture of me, because it was something that was so powerful that was separated. And like the calmness of like walking on like land between the two sides. And then afterwards, like the force that took out, oh my goodness. It is just like incredible to me that you can that it is so necessary and that it is just such a versatile part of nature.
Yeah.
And it is just so great. Nothing can live without
Do you
it.
like swimming?
I do like swimming, and for some reason there's this like joke in my friend group that I don't know how to swim, which for some reason is really offensive
Set
to
the
me.
record straight.
Yeah.
I do know how to swim.
And enjoy it.
I actually like it. I don't know why. There's just like like when Kim, like I wish we could go to the ocean, but like Kim doesn't know how to swim. Like I don't know where that came from. I do know how to swim.
I wouldn't want to swim in the ocean. I mean, that's
But think about how the salty water even.
Yeah.
It like, I could not survive in that, but something else needs it to survive.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. I don't understand. Like, something that in my mind, okay, we can think of this even. I don't know why I'm getting so worked up.
No, it's
but
good.
like, for those that, like you don't want to survive, like something that would kill me is absolutely essential to something else. Like I could not survive only on salt water. It's going to dehydrate me and make me more thirsty, and it hurts my eyes really bad.
Yeah.
But sharks love it.
Sharks
and
too.
whales love it, and coral thrives. Isn't that beautiful? That like they're like, it's okay that you don't need it because I need it.
Yeah.
Okay, have at it.
And what does that tell you about Jesus?
It just tells me. It's fine. Anyways, I just think it's really powerful. It's not even a metaphor. It's like very real, but it can be interpreted.